Friends, welcome back to the Young People's Ministries podcast. We are here on a nice big hangout with some folks that have been working to fight the ongoing monster of human trafficking in the world today. Particularly, I want to introduce first Beth Edmonds from the Cal-Nevada UMC Human Trafficking Coalition. Beth, could you say hello and introduce the rest of our panel as we continue our conversation today?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Beth, as Carl mentioned. I'll introduce everyone first, and I would like to first introduce Linda Smith. She is the founder and a former Congresswoman, and she started Shared Hope when she went to Mumbai and saw in the brothels the little children, and it broke her open. So she changed her life and her focus on human trafficking and is doing a fantastic job. And now I'd like to introduce Brianna. Brianna is a young lady that is the feature in a video that is used by Shared Hope. It's a nice long video that shows exactly how traffickers exploit young children, youth, in a repetitive way. It's a replicated process that they use. And Brianna was almost trafficked, and she has her story to tell in the video and does a great job with it. And now she has graduated from college and is a practicing nurse, and we're so excited to have her with us today. Lisa Vanderboom is my partner with the coalition. Lisa is actually the one that initiated the founding of the Coalition for Human Trafficking with the California Nevada United Methodist Church. And Lisa is in Sebastopol and attends the Methodist Church there. And we work together on the coalition in the Bay Area of California. And lastly, I'd like to introduce Brandon Moreno. Brandon is a freshman in college. He is currently in Panama and took time away from his trip from Costa Rica, which is where he is for college right now, to be with us on this hangout. And he is a member of a United Methodist Church in Portland, I believe, right, Brandon?
Actually right across the river in Vancouver, Washington.
Okay, so it's in Vancouver. I had a feeling it was Vancouver. That's why I wanted to clarify. And Brandon did his senior project with Brianna in his high school, and they focused on, obviously, talking with all the youth and promoting awareness of human trafficking in his high school. And they collaborated together on that, and that's why we wanted Brandon to be with us today. So take it away, Carl.
Well, thanks everyone for being with us. The United Methodist Church and its forebears claim their work in abolitionist work as a strong part of our heritage. And today we realize that it's not a problem that disappeared. And for many of us, that is a rude awakening with some of the calculations that more people are enslaved today than were at any point combined of the African slave trade to the United States. It's a rude awakening. It's a moment where we think, how can that be? But today, I really appreciate y'all's willingness to come and share your own stories about that. We wanted to start with Brianna. Brianna, with your proximity of personal experience, what was that moment? How did human trafficking become an issue you were ready to speak out about?
Well, Carl, I think you're right when you say that it's something that shakes people. It definitely shook up my life when I realized, when I sat down with Linda and had a conversation with her, she explained to me what sex trafficking really was in the United States and what it looked like. And the reality of the situation I was in was very clear to me, and I became aware that these men were really very dangerous. I did go home and read Linda's book, Renting Lacey, which actually brought me to the real gravity of the dangers that this industry brings upon young women. So with realizing how dangerous this situation that I was in was, and looking back and knowing how easily and smooth talking these guys, manipulated me, I think that with all of that combined and learning the average age is 13 years old, I thought if they can manipulate me at 18 years old, they absolutely can manipulate a vulnerable 13-year-old girl as well. So I just felt like I needed to look past the shame and guilt of this path that these traffickers led me down and the things that I had experienced with them, and to stand up and speak out, because my initial goal was, if I can share my story and just keep one girl from being impacted by this terrible, terrible thing we call human trafficking, then it is worth sharing my story and the embarrassment I might face. Now, with that being said, why stop at one girl? Why not continue going? And that's why I was so excited when Shared Hope, Linda came up with the idea to create an educational video that is appropriate to bring into schools and churches, and share my story with that format to be spread across the entire United States and beyond. And I just was so inspired by that idea and excited about it, and I think it's the greatest accomplishment to date. And I'm a nurse, so even with me graduating nursing school after all of this, I still am most proud of being part of the production of Chosen. So that's really what inspired me to share and speak out about human trafficking, is just knowing how easily these guys come into vulnerable young women and girls' lives. And I think it's ridiculous, and I want it to stop. And so the more people that know, the more community awareness out there, the less that this is going to happen. And, my story shows, really, if the community is aware and they know the signs of trafficking, they can rescue a girl and bring her to safety, hopefully before she's taken, states away from her home. And so that's why I share about human trafficking in my experience.
In a former era of state-sponsored slavery, someone who is claiming to be a owner of another person could be as brutal and obviously brutal as the law allowed. I hear you saying that today you needed help identifying what was becoming human trafficking in your own life. Is that something that Shared Hope is really trying to be clear about? That's the moment when we need to catch it now, because we won't see necessarily the outright obvious signs of brutality at the beginning?
Well, in the beginning, it's not an outright brutality. That's exactly right. They are charming. In my situation, they were very charming and approached me in a way that a friend would when you first meet them. And they gained my trust, and we built a bond in a way that you do with a new person in your life that you look at as a friend. And so you can't recognize that this person could possibly be manipulating you if you don't realize that these people exist in this way. They are true con men, and when you're talking about approaching a 13 to 20-year-old young woman or boy, and they don't know that this problem exists, especially in this format where somebody's approaching you as a friend, then absolutely, yeah, that is our goal, is to educate youth and educate, all youth, because as for me, I didn't see that this was a dangerous situation, but my friend did. And I think that a lot of friends can do what Evan, my friend, did for me, and that was speak out and tell an adult who could do something about it. So absolutely, our goal is to educate how these guys are manipulative, how they approach these young women and boys. And so, yeah.
So I hear also you saying that there are kind of two layers, a number of layers of speaking out. There's one moment of speaking out for an individual that you have some concerns about. Another speaking out, which is like you've done, make your story available, say yes to having your story included in things like videos that can help others be more aware. What has been your hope for speaking out? Are you looking for more ways to raise awareness? Are you looking for really trying to zero in on those moments when friends can speak up for friends, or all of it? How do we need to be better about speaking out?
Yeah, I think encouraging youth and using the power of knowledge, and encourage them to know more about the cultural issues that are happening to youth these days, and to kind of utilize education in schools and churches to really just encourage youth to be knowledgeable, to have the ability to realize that this might be a situation I don't want to get myself involved in. And I think knowledge is power. So anywhere that youth are, schools, churches, etc., we should be definitely going in and educating them. I don't know if that answered your question.
Sure, no. Thank you for sharing, and we really appreciate your willingness to be a part of the emerging solutions to a problem that hit pretty close to home for you. Thanks.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Linda, we wanted to move and ask a question for you. Where has the church been present or absent in this modern-day abolitionist work, this fight against modern-day human trafficking?
Well, I don't think it's been missing since the beginning of slavery. It's been there. The people of God that say no one should be a slave or be hurt, they've been standing up, from the Salvation Army running the first anti-slavery, or what they call white slavery in America, movements. And the reality was, it was commercial sex industry, or the ability to rent a girl from a village for a wealthy man in Chicago in America. And so the church has been there. And yet we recently, when it comes to commercial sex in America, we had a state-by-state answer. Now, for you Americans, in your state, there's a prostitution law, and there's also a child abuse law. Well, if a child isn't identified as a victim of a crime who is being prostituted, because no child can choose their own victimization, can they? They can't choose a lot of things until they're over 18. And so if we say, though, in the law, that as long as they're prostituted or in prostitution, they're under the prostitution law, they're a criminal. They're not over here under the raped, the molested, the kidnapped, the deceived section of the law. Then we've got a problem. And I'm blurring it a little bit because every state did it a little different. But each state got the Constitution, each state would have these laws. And the prostitution laws, and that was really hitting the woman, very rarely the men. And often that was a young girl, because they weren't buying adult women with ability. They were usually buying young. And then there was then they created the Protecting Their Children's laws. Well, when Shared Hope looked at these laws less than 6 years ago in each state, what we found is men that bought commercial sex with children were considered Johns, even a nice name, right? The child they were buying, under 18, as young as, we've had some 11 and 12, would have been charged with prostitution and put in jail. Now, often it could accumulate because of other things, like they might have drugs on them that was put there by their trafficker. They could end up being felons. And if they happened to go across state, turn 18, and there's a minor in the car, they would be felons, interstate sex offenders. Now, the men that bought in all states, including my own of Washington, where I was over Children and Family Services, state senate there, and a member of U.S. Congress from there, when I looked at our law 6 years ago, it was only a $500 fine as long as the man brought money to the crime to buy a minor, because we didn't distinguish between adults and children for prostitution. So that has, the church, though, is just you and I. We're in the church, and we think, right, that prostituting, selling yourself is a bad thing. And we've carried that, just like some of us had slavery in our background in our families, because that's what the culture was. But when I woke up, it was like, I can't believe what I'm seeing. I was doing research for the U.S. government all over the world. I run a third company, and it's set down right now, but it investigates trafficking rings. So I was going in to find out who was selling who owned the property, who was buying, and what the product line was, what nationality, what age. So I had it was called Trafficking Markets Investigations. Well, I made a decision about 7 years ago I would run operations on America as one of the countries. And when I did that, I guess that was about 2006. I guess that's 10 years ago. 2006 to about 2009. I started going into areas, and I would come out with, and I going in means others went in. They'd come out with undercover video and sale language of selling a little girl in the back car, and they were bartering for her. And I heard the sound, and it was a little girl's voice, a middle school kid. And then I heard another girl. This wasn't another country. This was an American girl. And before very long, I realized they sounded like my middle school granddaughter. And I go, oh my goodness, that must just be in Atlanta, Georgia, where that video came from. Looked at Las Vegas, got the same thing. Looked at Washington, D.C., got the same thing. The Justice Department gave me 11 more areas to evaluate in a slightly different way, and found out that all the law enforcement, the judges, the prosecutors, were still considering those children criminals, and we had the same market. And I'm going, I cannot believe it. In America, we have the same thing as I have in India, where I rescue children and put them in safe places. They're being sold to men every day, and as long as they're called a prostitute, he's just called a John and is a misdemeanor. Mm-hmm. Now that's the America we're in. And then came people like Beth, who's moderating. You get people that wake up and they go, hey, wait a minute, that's wrong. And they start organizing, and they go to people of God. They go to the denominations like you are, and they say, hey, we've got a problem. Can we come to your convention? Can we talk? Can we rally people? And before long, all the states now make it a felony to buy sex with a child. If you're doing that, it's a crime. Now, we're still having a little trouble enforcing that law in some states, but it didn't used to be a felony. It used to be a misdemeanor, if anything. We know now, as we grade the state, Shared Hope International has a legal arm of attorneys that really understand the state laws and federal laws. We evaluate and give grades every year to every state. 41 points of law we evaluate. And we write legal briefs so they can use those at the legislative level to change laws. Those particular grades were about all failures. F's and D's were the primary grades the first year, just 6 years ago. The second year it started changing. This last year we announced most of the states, over a majority, were getting B's and A's. These advocates from the churches, these people that found out, they made the change. And now what we're seeing is the awareness campaigns, like is being run really by the folks in California that are helping with this, and the ones that will represent us at the conference. They're running awareness campaigns. And you know, when people know, and they shine light into that darkness, there's not very much room for the traffickers. And then good people start saying, well, we want to figure it out. And the officials that are believers, that are in your denominations, they say, well, we're going to change the laws. Or the law enforcement that are in your denominations, they're going to say, you know, we're going to treat these girls different. We understand. Brianna wasn't a criminal. The other girl on the video is 13 years old on Chosen. She wasn't a criminal. She was just preyed on and used by a lot of men. And I think the greatest thing that you're going to do is you're going to wake up your congregations to pornography. It's just pictures of victimization of these girls. So I love what you're doing, and I think the church now could be equipped. Shared Hope has done something that it took me about 5 years to put together. We've created a kit for churches that will come out right before the May event where you will be, where the youth will be speaking. And we've known for a long time that Chosen works without being sexual, and it's accepted in churches. But we've known that God says things about trafficking. He says things about slavery. And that we really needed the biblical base around that, whether it be in PowerPoints or Bible studies. And that Shared Hope has a lot of other video meant for youth, meant for women, meant for men. And that we had enough to package a church packet, and that we'd create a prayer guide, leadership guides to how to speak on this, to prepare sermons. It comes out in one box. Everybody gets a flash drive with several videos, all of Chosen. You have a secular version on your flash drive that will say, this could go into your community. And then you have one that has all of the scriptures, and you can use that also for youth, for women, and for men. we believe the church is the answer, and so we've taken what is a legal group in some ways, a research group in another, and we have homes all over the world that we built for the kids we rescue and the young women. But we've now said, you know, we think we have enough to take this to the church and to tool them, to give tools to people that are wanting to go back into their church and to protect their own kids. You see, Brianna went to church. You're going to see Lacey on the Chosen video. She was a 12-year-old when they started stalking her, and 13-year-old when they took her. And she was going to a youth group all the time, and she loved it. And what if you all had known the signs of trafficking? We teach on this material the signs of trafficking. We give little pocket cards so you can take them with you. Everything is scalable. We want people to use things as cheap as possible and make as many as they need. So we don't say, oh, don't use our stuff. We give you the PDFs even to recreate practically every printed thing that we have. And we give you copies of many of our videos that are used for professional training even, that you can use in your church. So we believe the church is, I sort of say right, but ready, and to do it right. So thanks for the question.
Yeah, and thanks for the reminder that this is law work, but it's also frontline work, and that every teacher, every youth worker, every volunteer, every Sunday school teacher, you know, that we prepare to be aware of the signs can expand that safety net for the young people that we come into contact with. And who better than a church, this whole collection of people that are connecting in different ways. Some of them will be, you know, they will know their representative and be able to have some audience on a lobbying day or something like that. But for the rest of us in our neighborhoods, watching out for young people, being their advocates, and keeping an eye out for those signs. Mm-hmm. Thanks so much for providing us with some information on that resource. And Brandon, we wanted to turn to you and ask a little bit about what kinds of actions are you and all of us here today? What are we inviting listeners to take? What kinds of actions are we taking? Are we trying to encourage people to take?
That's a wonderful question, in that there's so many options for the listeners to be able to do. One of which is writing a letter to the editor, or both, to a congressional representative for your district. Those are, you can both do both, and they will inform everybody who is reading that newspaper or that letter that you sent to your congressman or congresswoman. And it tells them that child sex trafficking and sex trafficking in general is happening in every state, every town, every community. And then also another action that the listeners can take is to also have an awareness event in their community, where they just, you know, they speak about what sex trafficking is and what domestic sex trafficking is as well, and that they are also, you know, telling people what the signs are to what a trafficked victim is, and that they are going to be able to see if their own daughter or son is becoming a victim of this, and having this awareness, and the community as a whole can watch out for each other. And then also social media is becoming a humongous way of spreading word about anything in current society, and that I really urge people when they're posting on Facebook, and that they're kind of watching what they're saying. Because I know in my high school that, you know, oh, that's a pimp out bride, or that's an awesome pimped out ring or something, and that using that language is also a way that they're kind of, you know, not knowing, but kind of making it a way of talking in a non-correct way, and that is leading to people feeling that it's okay to go buy a girl for sex, which it isn't. And then, and if people are really encouraged and wanting to get really in the mix of everything, that they become a ambassador of hope with Men of Shared Hope International, which I am both an ambassador of shared hope and a defender. And I feel that, importantly for the men who are listening, that they need to understand that it's not a one-sided issue and it's not a one-gender issue, and that men need to make a stand because they are the ones who are wanting to buy a woman for sex when it isn't right. And men really need to start taking ownership of what they're doing, just like I've taken ownership of stuff I've done before. I've been doing this work with Shared Hope International because before me, Shared Hope, I had no clue, and I had no clue to what was happening in my high school. I know 2 women who were saved from sex trafficking, both one from my school and someone who went to my youth group for a while. And so it's very important that men are really aware and can be that friend like Evan and Brianna's story, making sure that they're watching their back.
You're bringing up, Brandon, the need to have raising awareness not just on the victimization side, but on the demand side, that by the language that we use, we could glorify the trafficking of women by calling somebody a pimp, and that means a good thing, right, in our vernacular language. And to be aware of our own participation in some of the systemic things that lead to objectification of women and others for personal gratification. I think that's an important point. I don't think, when we talk about raising awareness, I don't know if we really think that way usually to begin with. Is there anything else you want to say about being an ambassador? What is that identity like for you?
That identity is, it's part of who makes me who I am, and how I am a friend to my friends, because I have both female and male friends. I'm always watching when I'm hanging out with them and I always look for certain signs, and luckily I haven't yet seen any signs, but I'm happy that I know those signs, and that being an ambassador is, it's kind of like saying that you understand and that you're wanting to take that next step forward in this bringing awareness to everybody. And I just feel like, for me personally, that it just helps identify myself.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Brandon, for being in that role and calling others to participate in that way as well. Beth, we want to turn to you and ask the question of, where can people find out more? If this interview is, piquing someone's interest, if it's something that has touched someone's life, where do they need to go? Who do they need to call to get some more information, to get connected?
Yeah, thank you. I would recommend that people go to the Shared Hope website. It is sharedhope.org. Very easy. And there is every way that we've mentioned so far, and then some, to be able to progress. It's a great place to understand what's going on in the market, and it is a place where you can, for instance, do like Brandon's done and become a defender. And the defenders are best as young men, or men in general, men talking to men about their activities. And there is a pledge as well that's part of being a defender, which says, I am making the commitment in my life to demonstrate before my family and my friends certain things, which are, I am taking a stand to fight against pornography, because pornography is, an aspect of this market as well. There's a lot of girls that are started out by doing pornography, and then it graduates into something more. So taking a stand to fight against pornography, prostitution, or any form of commercial sex industry. I'll hold my friends accountable for their actions towards women and children, and I'll take immediate action to protect those I love from this destructive market. So that's one aspect of what you'll find on the website, the defenders, and becoming a defender. And that's for men. And then, of course, we have, as we have been hearing about, is the Chosen video that Brianna is part of. And it is amazing. It is the only video, I think, on the market, as actually I am positive, the only one on the market that really never talks about, here's sex trafficking ABCs. This is demonstrating how it happens, and you know, we hear that we have to hear something 7 times before we remember it. It's in here about that, right? So it helps kids especially to hear it multiple times from 2 different girls on 2 different scenarios of what happened and how they were groomed, and then the switch flips and then they become exploited by these traffickers. And becoming involved in just purchasing this for youth groups, I believe, would be fabulous for the church, or having an ambassador come and present to the youth and letting them watch the video and talking about how this impacts youth. And so that's a very valuable resource to actually bringing awareness to the youth groups, because as Brandon said, he's watching his friends. He's trying to see signs of something, whether they're, you know, engaging in prostitution or the commercial sex industry, or they're girls or young boys that might be showing signs, and that, you know, the video talks about the signs to look for. And we're asking everyone to be the eyes and the ears. If you see something, say something. If you know of something that might be occurring with a friend, it's better to call and make sure, you know, report it. Call the National Missing Children hotline that we use, which is 1-800-THE-LOST, and say something. Get help, in other words. Go to an adult and talk to someone that can get help. And then the next thing they could do is, Brandon mentioned, share on social media, Facebook, Twitter, forward emails from Shared Hope. Sign up on Shared Hope's website to get on their mailing list. And there's alerts for legislation that they could work with, that they'll receive in an email. And there's information that will be coming in the emails constantly with updates and legislation and things that are all about trafficking. And then ask your friends and family if you can share with them about trafficking and spread the word. We know the church is fantastic at doing social action. You know, we know in our hearts that this is something that really is necessary as a believer, that we take it out to the streets. And so this is the great opportunity for youth to engage their friends and engage their family in social action and become an ambassador, as Brandon mentioned. Lisa and myself, we're both ambassadors. We're trained volunteers for Shared Hope. They have an online training. It's very simple, it's very quick, and this is really all we do. We have a passion for spreading the awareness for trafficking. So it is our joy to go into the churches and make sure that we can talk to as many people as we can about what's going on in this industry and to try to change it, because it affects everyone. It affects children, it affects parents, it affects males, it affects females. You know, the demand side, particularly, we want to make sure that if men knew that they were exploiting children when they bought someone for sex, I don't think they would do it. I don't think they know. I don't think they realize what's really going on out here. So we need to actually get the word out. And as also Brianna mentioned, they could read the book that Linda wrote called Renting Lacey. And it talks about, you know, everything they need to know. Do it as a book club, as an example. So there's all kinds of ways to help. And then obviously we would love any donations that were people were interested in making as well to Shared Hope to continue the work.
Absolutely. We'll try to put links to those resources so that people can find them easy in the show notes here. Lisa, we wanted to turn to you for a little bit more about that kind of support work. What are the ways in which the community can support you, the coalition, Shared Hope? What resources, money, prayers, time, etc., are you really trying to mobilize right now for this work?
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to really thank Shared Hope International for the partnership and working with the church. It's been amazing. Something is really alive and on the move in the church about this at really deep grassroots levels. We have so many churches approaching us to have an ambassador come out to speak. Many thanks to the United Methodist Women for their support, particularly on this work in trafficking. They're supporting our booth. They're providing the funds for us to have the booth at General Conference. So we really thank them for that. So I want to reiterate some of the things that Beth had mentioned, and then also want to mention something specifically about what we can do within the churches. Also, Linda mentioned the Just Faith kits. So there's a Just Faith conference happening next week in Florida that I'll be attending to learn about Shared Hope's focus on the faith communities and the churches. And I'm so excited to be able to bring back these Just Faith kits because they, as Linda mentioned, there'll be sermon notes so pastors can prepare sermons on that, a 30-day devotional, and a 4-week group study. And so I'm going to be bringing that back, and actually the very next Sunday after I get back, my pastor is having me do the sermon on what happened at the Just Faith conference and give an update on what's going on in the trafficking work. And it's one of our fundraising Sundays, so we'll be also doing a fundraiser for Shared Hope that day too. So I want to encourage the churches to go to sharedhope.org and look up those the Just Faith kits, because these are for the churches to use, and it's just fabulous that we have these tools to do that. So, so that's one thing. Sharedhope.org. Go look up those Just Faith kits. 2. Contact Shared Hope. When you go on the website, you can request an ambassador to come speak to your church. So please do that. Have someone come out. We've been doing it all kinds of different ways. Sometimes the ambassador gives the sermon, is in the sermon time. Sometimes it's after at the coffee hour. There's all kinds of different ways. Or it's a different day of the week and an evening, however it works best for the church. So please have someone come out and share this message, because what we're finding is there is this spiritual DNA within the church about abolition. And when people wake up to the fact that, hey, slavery's still happening, it triggers that deep emotional sense of who we are as Methodists to get engaged again. And, you know, slavery didn't end when Abraham Lincoln did the Emancipation Proclamation. It's still happening now, but it's deeper underground in the dark places, and we want to shine the light on that. So then as far as the ambassadors, you can become an ambassador too. So anybody out there listening, adults, youth, what have you, please go to the Shared Hope website, sharedhope.org, and take a look at signing up to become an ambassador yourself, speaking within your church, speaking within your youth groups, speaking within your district and your conference. That's how it started for us in California Nevada Conference. It started in our district, in the Bridges district. Big shout out to Skylar Rhodes, who's my district superintendent. He gave his blessing for us to go ahead and start a team, and then people from other districts started hearing about it, and before we knew it, we were a coalition, a conference-level coalition, and now we're going to General Conference. So these are the kinds of things that happen when you get in line with what God is guiding you to do, to stand up for the people who are being oppressed and the vulnerable. Beth also mentioned donations to the work of Shared Hope. Do a fundraising event at your church, doing a fundraising event in your community. There is so much need to be able to provide the materials like Shared Hope is providing with the Just Faith kits and so on, and the films and everything. So please consider doing a fundraising event. I'm also going to be working with my local high school, and they're talking about doing a fundraising event as well. So that also helps the church working with the schools in the area as well, to show our relevance as a church. You know, the church has been talking a lot internally about how do we get out there in the world? How do we show that relevance? Bishop Brown is my home bishop, And at our annual conference, our focus last year and this year is engaging our faith in the public square, right? And so showing that relevance of the church alive, the church at work, helping people. And so this is just an amazing way that the church can activate around that, and it can also show our youth how much they mean to us. Like, and the fourth point that I was going to make is to be willing to talk about this for the sake of our children. People don't talk about sex in church. People don't talk about some of the more difficult things that are going on in the world, and I think we need to really be talking about that, having those honest conversations with each other, letting our youth know you're important to us. You're so important to me that I'm willing to go into an uncomfortable thing to talk about to help protect you, and to be real with our youth, to say, hey, we know you're being faced with this out in the world in your life. We're not going to pretend at church like nothing's going on because we're too comfortable to talk about it. No, we need to go there. So we need to really engage with the children, with the youth, to be real with them, to forewarn them, like Brianna was talking about, to tell them what it looks like so they can look out, and like Brandon was saying, and so they can look out for their friends and they can see what's happening out in the world. And I guess the other thing is to just approach your church leaders and tell them it's important for you to bring this the situation into the awareness, into the church, and to the community at large. So I think those are some of the ways that we can reactivate as the abolitionists that we have been and that we continue to be, and also knowing that God is with us in this. I mean, God is so big in this, I can't even begin to tell you, because I had no idea. Last year in May, I was actually working at a Shared Hope International booth at the Freedom Summit at Levi Stadium, where the Super Bowl was held. And I kept running into all different people from Methodist churches there, working on this issue with different organizations. And I just got sparked in my heart of, hey, let's do ambassador presentations in the churches and bring this also within the church in really deep and fundamental ways to help us engage our faith in the public square. And so, again, I just really thank Shared Hope for partnering with us. And I'm so thrilled that we're going to be doing so much work with the youth in the church, too, because we're helping to let them know they're important to us enough for us to be doing this work to help defend them. And it gives them that ability to get real and address something that's going on in the world.
Thanks. From the days of Pharaoh to our days in Portland, this is an issue that we, people of faith, been working on. Brianna and Linda, do you have some encouragement, some words to leave us with as we go?
Yeah, sure. I really appreciate everybody coming together and opening their hearts and their eyes to this issue. I think the most important thing is our children and our youth. They are the future, and they have every right to grow up in a safe neighborhood, town, church, school, where they are safe and nurtured and encouraged to be the best human that they can be as they become an adult. And it's our job to make sure that that is what happens. So I just appreciate everybody being open to sharing this issue with the children in your community.
You know, I am so, I'm inspired. I've been doing this for 18 years since I rescued the first child in a foreign country and had to do something with this child who was like, okay, God, now what? But as I watch and I see what's happening in America, I was so discouraged with the first research I did because I found so many more children, young people, who were being sold for sex. And it was so sad, and I felt in despair. But as I have seen with the ambassadors, each time I meet an ambassador somewhere, that God has just sparked this passion in, like Lisa and Beth and Brandon, I realize we're not alone. And when I look at a whole denomination who's focusing on this issue, and youth who are seeing this all over the United States, I now don't feel as alone and as in despair, because I don't think that there's a chance now for traffickers to be in the dark as long as we're there. You know, when there's light in the dark, the traffickers are just in trouble. So thank you, Beth. Lisa, Brandon, for bringing light into that darkness, and for using those tools, whether it be Rennie Lacey, which I thought I'd have a nervous breakdown writing because it was emotional. All of the characters are real people, by the way. And I take their names off and change them a little, but they're all off of real people. And Chosen, producing it with Brianna out of her hurt. And out of Lacey's, she has a different name. We've changed her name to protect her, out of her hurt. And then to find that those tools are actually saving lives and changing lives and working in the community. I could not be more blessed today than any time in this fight at knowing that there's people out there fighting and bringing awareness. So Lisa, Brandon, and Beth, thank you. And Carl, thank you for doing this today.
We really appreciate all of your witnesses to this ongoing issue in the world, an ongoing ministry that is needed. In the 19th century, there was a hymn book called the Anti-Slavery Harp. It meant that there were congregations that every week were singing about the end of slavery, and they're envisioning God's fulfillment of the promise of freedom for everyone. And I hear that continued call in the work that you all are doing, and that continued promise that there can be congregations that found, that center their life around this call to freedom for everyone around them. And I thank you for the tough work that you've done, the important stories that you've shared, and the work that is yet to be done with all the new partners that come alongside. Thanks again, and we'll look forward to sharing this with as many people as will listen. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Carl.